All right, this episode of the Disruption Lab is filmed in front of a live studio audience. Chris, you've been at the forefront of integrating AI into marketing and building communities around it for a while now. Can you share kind of a defining moment in your journey that solidified your interest in AI and your interest in the potential here?
Absolutely. Well, it was really being an AI naysayer to start, and what I mean by that is in late 2022, when ChatGPT was coming on the scene, there was a lot of buzz around it, and my former clients and people that I know that happen to own businesses, they were talking about AI and how they were using it in their business, and I was a complete naysayer. I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I don't believe in the technology. I don't believe it can do marketing or anything like that. And so I said, okay, fine. I'll take the plunge and I'll start to play around with it. So actually I had it write a blog post comparing grass-fed beef to grain-fed beef, and that was the business we were in. And it actually created a blog post in about, 15 seconds that I rated about a B+. And so the light bulb went on, and I thought, okay, well, with my marketing background, what if I was to take some of those experiences and start to plug that into AI platforms, aka prompting, and I was pleasantly surprised at the results. And so we started using this for our own family business, and then after a while, people started coming to me and saying, hey, I heard that you're working in AI. Can you help us with marketing? Can you help us with sales alignment? Can you help us with HR and things like that? And I said, well, of course I can. And that was roughly 2 years ago, and since then, I've been pretty much all in on my AI journey. In other words, being curious about it, exploring the technologies, testing my own use cases, learning from others, a lot of knowledge sharing, and here I am today. So it's been very interesting over the last 2 years. I never would have guessed I would have been this deep into AI and technology like this.
So it's interesting to hear your personal story about the going from naysayer to proponent and advocate, but also your co-leadership of the AI Club here in Kansas City. I think that's been fascinating for me to watch, fascinating for others to watch, the growth, the kind of explosive nature of that group, the flurry of activity we constantly see around that. What cultural shifts have you observed in Kansas City regarding, since you started this journey a couple of years ago? What kind of things have you seen that have been changing, especially under, that AI Club kind of?
Yeah, the AI Club was actually inspired by the Social Media Club of Kansas City, which was an organization that was started back in the late 2000s to really understand or try to understand what is social media. How can we use this for our business? And back then, there was a lot of excitement with the emerging technology. There were a lot of social media professionals already in Kansas City. And so that group was really special to me in that just meeting amazing people who happen to be smart and the collaboration coming out of it. And so fast forward 15 years, a buddy that I had met back through the Social Media Club, we were talking, and he's a world-class photographer, and he was talking about AI for storyboarding and shot selection and things like this. And I thought, well, that was very fascinating. I never would have thought that. And so we kind of both at the same time said, well, what if we created a club to talk about AI? And that was almost 2 years ago to the day. And we thought that there would be 4 or 6 people probably at a bar somewhere just kind of riffing on technology with really no purpose. And people wanted to have a conversation about AI. So we had our first meeting in April of 23, and we had a couple dozen. And then it kept growing and growing and growing to one of the largest AI-centric organizations in the country now. What does that tell us? That the Kansas City the Kansas City technology scene and the Kansas City innovation scene, of which you're very much a part of, is only getting better and better over time. So there's a lot of collaboration, excitement, really cool people doing cool things, and I think that we're just getting started. And another eye-opening thing for me was seeing Kansas Cityans punch above our weight class when it comes to AI. In other words, there are all kinds of communities around the country talking about AI personally, professionally, and otherwise. We're seeing more attendance here at our meetups. We're seeing more online conversations, etc. It's a great time to be in Kansas City, but I think that there are unicorns about ready to come out of this city. One of my favorites, Heft IQ, with Herc, aka Leary Hercules, and any number of storytellers and other ones certainly. But there's just a lot of excitement in Kansas City, and we just happened to tap into that at the right time and create an umbrella so people could kind of jam out and share ideas.
Yeah, and where are you guys at in terms of membership? And how do you gauge the size? I've seen this, that we're one of the larger ones in the country, and I believe it. I mean, you guys have hosted events here, and it's just fascinating. Yeah, but hey, let's manifest it, right?
Yes. So we are an informal professional organization. So what we want to do is we want to reduce barriers to participation. So we don't really have membership fees right now. We really don't have a true membership count, but in the last 2 years, we've had several thousand people come to our live events. We've had several hundred, actually probably close to 1,000 coming to our online events. And really the attendance at our monthly meetups, we have panel discussions, we have different formats. We're seeing well over 100 people, as you've experienced. So it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just been a really special experience, and we're kind of building the rocket ship as we're riding on the rocket ship. Sure. And so, people ask, what is the vision for the club? What are you really trying to do? And it's very much a work in progress in that all we want to do is be a community facilitator. All we want to do is create a venue where people can talk, meet each other, and the rest will work itself out. And so we're putting together a board of directors right now. We have additional involvement with sponsors. So we are charting our course this year, so stay tuned. We have some big ideas, but we're not quite ready to share yet.
So Chris, I mean, it's when you look at the makeup of the club, and like you said, you guys have hosted events here. We've seen quite a few people, over 100 people here for your events easily. It's a very diverse community that you have that are focused on this. How do you see communities balancing or embracing really this as a technology, since it is a horizontal technology that spans all industries and kind of so many job functions and so many possibilities? How do you see the communities balancing this, embracing the technology for use, but at the same time, the ethical considerations and the potential biases that underlay, some of this? I know you guys have had a lot of conversations about this in some of the meetups that you've had, some of the club activities that you've had. So what are your views on that?
I'll start with the ethics first. That's a conversation that I think we're all having as a community in terms of what are the ethical implications, what are the impacts of our communities. Again, how can we reduce barriers to AI use and democratize these tools for everybody? And I think that that's very much a work in progress in that trying to get similar-minded people together to say, okay, what are the questions that we should be asking? What are the ethical considerations, whether that's in the school districts and embracing AI, whether that's business ethics considerations, if your company is going to be 1,000% profitable, and we have topics like UBI coming in. And so that's the goal of the community, to figure out, again, what questions should we be asking, what does it mean, and how can we come together to answer those questions, and then to inform everyone else in the community, whether that is at the university level, at the business level, certainly government, and those types of folks.
Have you guys been asked to do any of that, maybe education to regulators or government entities? Have you guys had the opportunity to be in front of any of them yet?
We're working on that. We've had some informal people reach out, and we're trying to put together kind of a mini framework of how to manage that conversation right now. So I would say these conversations are just getting started, and there are disparate conversations, whether it's in this room or at university at UMKC or things like that. So I think organically it's happening. Now we just need to kind of use gravity to bring everyone together to kind of guide us to that North Star in terms of, what is it? What are the ethical questions, and how can we all participate in being knowledgeable about that?
Yeah, I think my hope is that we don't run into a situation like we saw with the internet, where you get in front of regulators 15, 20 years after the thing is actually established and embedded in the society, and you still have people that are making policy decisions that have no understanding of the technology. So you guys seem like you're in a good position with this community to be able to help drive some of that education.
We're trying to, and you made me remember, I think, back in the late 2000s when they hold Zuckerberg up in Capitol Hill, and so I think there was somebody in Congress that said, oh, well, do you need to be on the internet to use Facebook? Yeah. And so there was a gross misunderstanding of social media and technology, and I would say now that we're at orders of magnitude, it's orders of magnitude more complex. And so, it's, I'm trying to find the right words here, but it's going to change everything very, very quickly, and it's going to impact, society, our community, the business landscape, and everything. So, kind of trailed off on your answer there, but, these are the important questions that we are trying to get the community involved in to come up with some leadership so that we can have a broader conversation.
Yeah. So it's a good segue. So I'm going to tie this back to entrepreneurship and to marketing specifically. Okay. So I know that's kind of in your wheelhouse. For an entrepreneur that's thinking about using artificial intelligence for marketing, what do you see as some of the misconceptions that might be out there about using it in that context? And, how can either the technology or those entrepreneurs overcome some of these challenges or some of these misconceptions that are out there?
I think one of the misconceptions is that AI is going to replace us. Right. And so as a marketing professional, of which I am, that's one of my hats, that the fear is, what if these technologies can do what I do, and they can do it at a fraction of the cost? There's actually, the cost to produce high-quality content right now is literally pennies on the dollar, and the cost to produce great content is not too much more expensive on that. And so I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, embracing AI as a tool, that's all it is, right? And I think that the real value that entrepreneurs, whether in marketing or anything else, is taking what's in your mind and taking your experiences, both personally and professionally, and learn how to prompt that into AI tools like Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT and others. And so for me, that is the real value of kind of taking your secret sauce and learning how to import that, if you will, into these AI tools. I would say from a marketing perspective, AI has unleashed unbelievable productivity, and to be able to do things very, very quickly and very cheaply, which 10, 15, 20 years ago may have cost tens of thousands of dollars or even more. One use case on that's market research. So, as marketers, we want to know what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on with our target customers, what are issues that we should be aware of. And AI is brilliant, namely Perplexity. It's a great, almost real-time market research tool. But I think that marketers can be smarter about their customers' pain points, what messaging may resonate with those target audiences using tools like AI. And even going deeper into what are the customer persona attributes, right? Going further than the demographics, what are their psychographics? What channels are they active in? I mean, for me, that is gold as far as information to tailor my message to the right audience in the right channel. I think the other thing too is being able to do things outside of your normal capabilities. And what I mean by that is I am not a graphic designer. As a matter of fact, I'm probably the worst graphic designer in the history of the world, but I can use AI to come up with speaker cards for our events or for marketing, for marketing collateral pieces. So instead of trying to engage a third party, which I do, but if I need to get something out very quickly and I know what I want to do, I can use these AI tools to help me do that. Whether that's the ideation or the production. So for me, especially with marketing, I think that's one of the best use cases for AI right now, at least generative AI, that marketers should be embracing this technology to help them be quicker, more cost-effective, and actually produce more ROI for your clients. Because if it's not producing ROI, what is it really doing, right?
It seems to me that the marketing community, the creative community has been early adopters of this. Yes. What do you think is behind that?
I would say the legacy technology companies, and really the ad industry, who's been here for a while. VML comes to mind. You have Barkley. You have many others. But I think there's been an adoption at that level, which I would call the enterprise level. And they have more resources to be curious. Right? Yeah. And so that they can invest resources in doing internal hackathons and, internal sandboxing and things like that. So I think it kind of came from the top down in some regards from some of the bigger organizations. But then again, I think it came from the bottom up, that you had people who saw opportunities or who just took the plunge. And to me, that's really cool. So I really think it's coming from both directions, and I'm glad it is, because I'm not sure if I'd want it to be one or the other.
Yeah, I saw today OpenAI announced that they had launched a new, capability to generate graphics, to generate, some of the.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, because some of the things that I've seen come out, you can tell right away when you look at it. You're like, oof.
You mean the misspellings?
Yeah, the misspellings and the weird.
Used to be the 6 and 8 fingers, and just kind of distortion. But, for me, it's become a horse race with the different AI platforms jockeying for position, whether that is image generation, aka text to image, or video creation, or other things. I haven't been able to play around with that as much, but I'm curious as to, the image generating capability with these upgrades. I've heard that they're starting to, with this tool in particular, hard to tell humans versus AI. Like, you can't tell the difference between AI generated and, like a stock photo or your own photography or something like that.
Yeah, it's exciting and scary all at the same time.
I wish it would slow down.
Yeah, right?
Can you tell them to do that?
That is the thing that I think has been, so as someone who's worked on, large technology platforms in the wireless industry and telecommunications, to watch the growth of the platforms or adoption of new technologies, especially infrastructure technologies, usually there is a much longer adoption and much longer growth. This has not been the case. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're still so early in really market acceptance of this, but the number of tools, the number of uses has just exploded, and it's hard to keep up with.
Oh, it's impossible. I've been in MarTech going back to 1996, and for me, a day in real time is about 10 to 14 days of AI evolution. It's impossible. I mean, there are very few AI experts out there. It's moving so quickly. It's being matricized out. In other words, you're having specialized AI platforms, like for video or for image generation and so on. So it is going to probably continue to, the speed is going to continue to pick up. In other words, we're going to get faster and faster. I do think we will hit an AI winter. I think we had one maybe 6 months ago, but I think it needs to slow down. Why? Because the humans need to catch up. Yeah. And if you think about the internet, which I think has been around for over 30 years now, I think we're still learning. Right? I mean, we're still learning on how to build websites or, how to create content that resonates. So, I read somebody that I thought was very insightful that said it'll take 30 years for us as humans to catch up with the AI technology. So this is the long tail, and people racing into this, I say crawl, walk, run. It's exciting, and we can do all kinds of things, but when you go fast, you tend to break things. Yeah. So I do think we need to kind of incrementally step our way into this new frontier as much as we can. I don't know if we'll be able to do that with how fast things move.
You just introduced a new paradigm into my head where I think we're going to start talking about things in AI years. It's kind of like dog years. Like AI years are going to be 10x multiple of.
Well, for example, even in the last 6 weeks or so, you have the deep research really being more, which is ChatGPT's kind of super research capability. You had DeepSeek come out that disrupted everything. You have new models that are coming out. Claude came out with 3.7. Gemini just came out with their new model. I mean, it's just moving so quickly. I wish I had more time to kind of play around with it. But I think the takeaway there is fundamentals are kind of key. So really establishing, understanding what a prompt is, understanding how to use the prompts with all these tools, which to me is the fundamentals, before we start getting too fancy pants and, trying to engineer very complex things which may not be ready for prime time, like AI agents. I think AI agents are great. Some organizations are using AI agents, but I would say for the most, it's not ready yet. It needs to mature a little bit. So stay tuned. That maturation will happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, I can't keep up with the tools. I mean, every time I see another article about here's the greatest AI tools that you should be using, and I'll start to use 2 or 3 of them, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. This is going to change the entire way I do things for the better in most instances that I've seen, but there's just so many coming out. I did see an interesting perspective that said the infrastructure. So there's this rush to data centers, there's this rush to power, there's this rush to all the things that infrastructure that needs to be kind of underlaid to make this work. They said the money's not going to be there though, and they gave some examples of other technology infrastructures that have been implemented. They said that the money is going to be made on the applications that ride on this. That's where the unicorns are going to start to emerge, is the people who have mastered the technology to solve real problems, versus just being, we get enamored with technology, we get enamored with cool tools. But what problems are we solving, and how are we using the technology to solve those problems? Are you seeing a lot of that through the interactions with the club and some of those things?
I think you brought up a huge issue with infrastructure. And so I was actually talking with somebody at a big power company that's local to Kansas City. And what they were saying was something to the effect of 25 years ago in the late 90s, with the internet blowing up, everyone thought, okay, we need more power plants. And so it was my understanding, and maybe you had touched on this, last year, but we had too much capacity in power plants, and then they started to basically stop those. They stopped the permitting, they stopped the development, and now here we are needing to restart that infrastructure, and we're behind the curve. As you know, it takes years, if not maybe a decade, to get all of the things that you need to do to get a power plant built. And so the question becomes, okay, well, with these big data centers, how is that going to suck our infrastructure? It's potentially going to make electricity a lot more expensive. Who gets priority? If they're taking all the power, are we going to have brownouts here? What does that mean? So I think that's another critical issue that we need to figure out. We need to figure out very quickly, what infrastructure do we need? How are we going to build that infrastructure? How can we make our existing infrastructure more efficient? And who is going to lead that charge? Because I think it's great to have Google data centers. I hope we get more, but are we going to break the system?
Right.
I don't know.
And the concentration, I think, of that power or that capability I think that's the other thing that worries a lot of folks, is the concentration of the infrastructure.
Now, the other angle of the infrastructure is, let's say, supply chain. And, I go back to Herc again, but I think there's a huge opportunity for this region and this city to be leaders in things like supply chain. Okay? Supply chain is critical. When I was in the beef business, the supply chain's what put the hurt on us. There weren't enough USDA facilities. There weren't enough people to, work as butchers and things like that. So now I totally went down the beef rabbit hole, and but things like supply chain. So I do think that you are going to see infrastructure plays, almost from a unicorn perspective, especially with supply chain, but also healthcare, food production, technology stacks, and other things. So I think Kansas City is well positioned to be a supply chain leader. And I think that's going to happen sooner. I think that actually is happening already.
Yeah, it seems like it.
My Animal's another one.
Yeah, so to that point, you are seeing a lot of the innovation through the activities of the club. You're seeing you've done pitch competitions, you've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of entrepreneurs through the sessions and so on. What's a good success story that you've seen where somebody's implemented AI into, whether it's for marketing or something else? What's a really good success story that you may have seen through this journey with the AI Club?
I think that there's two angles to that. One are success stories that came out of the community, aka companies, and then individual success stories. So, I think one of my favorites, has been a favorite, is everyone's favorite, Storyteller. I think the understanding the market need for telling stories that are reflective of my background or my experiences, and the execution of that idea. I mean, it makes me smile. I mean, it gives me goosebumps. That, to me, independent of whatever business success, is hugely powerful. And I was introduced basically through the AI Club, and that people are like, oh, have you heard of Storyteller? I'm like, kind of a little bit, but like tell me. And then I think you have a lot of, I mean, there's company after company. I don't want to bring them up because I'm going to forget about great companies, but also individuals who may have been laid off. They may have been in a career pivot, but they just jumped right into it. And what these folks have been able to do, and again, I don't want to name names because I'll forget people, but it's wow that they said, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go down my own path. And what they've been able to do, look at my face. It's shocking. So I love the company perspective, but I also love the individual perspectives. And even outside of business, people coming and saying, you know what, I'm using AI for positive affirmation. I'm using AI to, be a soundboard and things like that. I'm using AI to lift me up, to help me remember the positives instead of just kind of dealing with all the stresses. So I think that's another thing that I'm always hearing of fun use cases from people of how it made their lives better. And to me, that's more compelling than a business use case.
Fascinating. I hadn't thought about that till just now, but the idea of, and I think there was an Apple series not too long ago about robot. I think the story had gone bad, but it was the idea of creating these robots as human companions, and to people who are in depression, people who are dealing with mental health challenges, to have like that companionship. Hadn't thought about AI as a role, as a better role, more intuitive kind of maybe companion for people in those types of situations.
I love that angle because mental health's important, and there's a lot of AI-centric mental health startups in Kansas City.
But the positive affirmations thing, when you were talking about the people are using it as like a personal tool for positive affirmations, or for those
the robots
yeah.
is what triggered that thought. So robots, we're all going to have robots probably by the end of the decade, which I don't know is good, bad, or scary. But what I'm thinking is, to have it be a confidant, to have it be a friend. And, if you would have said that 5 or 10 years ago or 2 years ago, I would have been like, that's really weird and scary. But if you think about somebody who's isolated, if you think about somebody who's dealing with specific mental health issues, and maybe they don't have people to talk to, you think of maybe somebody who lost their spouse. And on one hand, when my grandfather passed away, this was many, many years ago, my grandma, she couldn't lift like a pot of food, right? She physically couldn't do that. She couldn't move a chair. So we could have robots helping people who aren't able to do that, but also somebody to talk to. I just think that's compelling, and I think that that's something that can be another tool for our mental health, in our mental health toolbox to help people. And I think that's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think that's going to happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think with the advances in the technologies on both sides, both physical and through AI, you're right. I think it's going to happen much sooner than we anticipated. We've talked a lot about the rapidly evolving state of AI and how quickly things are happening. For your industry and marketing specifically, what kind of emerging trends do you see that could revolutionize the industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, marketing's going to be an interesting industry to monitor because I believe you're probably going to see 80 or 90% of marketing jobs automated. So what does that mean? I don't know. I'm seeing big alphabet-centric marketing firms go from tens of thousands of employees to maybe something like 1,000. So I think you're going to have more nimble organizations. You're not going to have the big behemoths, like you used to in the, I forget the TV show about the ad. Mad Men.
Yeah,
Thank you. So I think you're going to, that is going to be a dinosaur, and you're going to see disruption in terms of smaller groups being more efficient. and doing better work. The other part of that is if I could take a large language model from a big marketing agency and I reduce my headcount by 80%, what does that mean for profitability? What does that mean for universal basic income or tax brackets? And I think my fear is that you're going to have an even wider gap from the haves and have-nots, and you're going to have hyper-wealthy individuals who kind of understand how to apply this technology, and everyone else is going to be left scrambling. So I think it's going to be very disruptive to especially the marketing industry. And I think there'll be some good, I think there'll be some bad, and I think there'll be some ugly, and I think the dust will settle relatively quickly in the next 2 years, and we'll have a little bit better idea of what that looks like.
I think one of the things that we hear a lot is the gap that AI won't solve is lived experience and human creativity.
For sure.
Right, what comes out of that. So what role do you see for that human creative to stay engaged as this continues to evolve?
For me, it's AI as a soundboard that I can, instead of pestering my friends and family as a soundboard, what do you think about this or what do you think about that? That we can use AI, to have collaborative conversations on. I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
It was the idea, what role does this human creativity have in marketing strategies or in the ecosystem?
I think that's a tough question to ask, but where I see some opportunity is AI in art. Okay, and so there are AI-driven art installations at galleries here in Kansas City, and so what I would look for is artists. Like, how are artists using AI? Like, again, not so much business from the business point of view, but like, okay, well, what does that mean? Art is art, and now you actually have AI-generated art that went up for auction, and people paid a lot of money for it. So I think that part of creativity is interesting. I think humans have been humans over the last 100,000 years. Our evolution really hasn't changed all that much. And so I think humans will continue to be creative in the same way that we create art and we write things and we produce songs. But I think AI can help take that creativity to a different level or another level. And for somebody like me who I can't draw a stick figure, like I'm terrible, that can help me unleash my inner artist, because I think it reduces the fear factor, even by paint by numbers, right? Like if I'm going in and painting, I'm going to have like self-doubt, right? And so maybe AI can help me break down those fear barriers to try something new or to write a song where I don't know how to, play an instrument right now. But if it helped me write a song, of which I have used AI to do, I think that inspires me to go pick up a guitar and to actually go learn to say, okay, now that I kind of know enough to be dangerous, now I do want to learn traditional, music or art or, those types of things.
For me, it's been one of those, you can be an expert in one field, and we talk a lot about intersectionality. We talk a lot about how do you, in places like this or in the work that we do, how do you bring experts in different areas, different perspectives together. It feels like that becomes somewhat less important now because I can be an expert in one thing and the AI can be an expert in all the other things, and I can build an ecosystem of experts around me virtually now.
Yeah, it reminds me of The Matrix in that, one scene was, download so I can fly the helicopter. Right? And so I think AI allows us to do that. Like, help me code Python. I have no idea how to code Python. It can help me do that. Help me come up with Excel formulas. It can help me do that. So I think that, yes, the world is our oyster in that I can ask AI to teach me, train me, educate me, point me in the right direction on anything I want to learn, which is wonderful. The scary, it's not scary, but the problem is when you can do anything, it's like, where do you start? Right. And it becomes very overwhelming, at least for me, and then it causes me to kind of shrink a little bit because it's like, I don't even know where to start. But that's where AI can be like, oh, hey, I could ask AI, well, it's overwhelming. Where can I start,
I think that's the magic, right? We're enamored with the what ifs, we're enamored with the capabilities. We kind of want to test it and push its limits and find the new tools and the cool things to do with it. But at the end of the day, it's all going to come back to what problems are we trying to solve?
Absolutely.
How do you present the big problem?
Business and individually, it's like, what is the use case? I think everyone's like, oh, I can use AI, but why? I mean, is optimizing an email, is that really cool and exciting?
No, but it's cut a good portion of my day away now that I've got a tool that does that for me.
It does, but being very intentional of the why, and that's what when we work with businesses, it's like, okay, what is the purpose of using AI within your organization? What is the intent behind it? Like I think the why is very important, and to really think through, why am I using this tool? Other than to just save time, I think the extension of that is, yes, it saves time, but it allows me to do more innovative things. It allows me to spend more time with family. It allows me to pick up the guitar and learn how to play it, as opposed to just doing task-based or ad hoc-based stuff.
Yeah, definitely. As someone who's been involved in AI education and community building, and that combination of things, what kind of leadership lessons have you learned in terms of fostering innovation and collaboration, whether through the experiences from the group or your own experiences in organizing, what has blossomed into this massive member organization?
Yeah, I would say the things that I've learned from the community, curiosity, number one. That this is a great time to be curious, and curiosity can lead into innovation, and curiosity can be a superpower. I think, the other thing that I've seen that's been very impressive with the AI club and community is humbleness. And, even people who are doing very, very cool things and potentially being very, very successful, we're not seeing this in the AI world. I'm not seeing this in the AI world like I've seen it in other industries. If you go to a data conference, you have people always trying to outsmart each other, and things of that nature. So I think being humble, not reading your own press, if you are starting to get traction, to say, that's great, but that really doesn't take me off of my path. I would say knowledge sharing, and we all learn from each other is probably the biggest takeaway. I learn from people I talk to. I learn from their LinkedIn post that they're talking about use cases. So I just think it's that community knowledge sharing, which is hypercritical everywhere. I mean, even within any aspect of innovation, AI's even more important. I think being flexible, things change. Things change very, very quickly. Platforms change, so being somewhat nimble. And I think having fun. AI, it's about having fun. And if you're not having fun, then maybe be thinking about different ways to use AI, and maybe you're having fun. So I think it's more of the soft skills, if you will. And, to me, it's the human interaction of still looking people in the eye, seeing smiling faces, seeing the light bulbs pop on. That, to me, is something I think gets lost in technology, and I'm reminded of that at the AI meetups and even individual conversations, which is awesome. Yeah. I never would have thought about that. I would have thought it would have been a bunch of nerds and introverts kind of, all trying to outsmart each other. Oh, here's the AI agent I built. And it's completely the opposite of that.
Yeah, you walk into a meetup, I was worried it was going to be a bunch of people with their laptops open, and like maybe talking to each other across the table, with chat. But it's such a human connection group. Like the club, and when you get there, it's just all about that human connection piece. I'm not going to say we tried to make that happen, but it happened organically, which I think goes to show the people who came, in that if you have circles of people talking, I have seen time and time again somebody sitting outside and somebody says, hey, come join the conversation, or somebody who doesn't know anyone. Find me other professional groups that do that. You talk about diverse backgrounds. We have diverse thinking. We have diverse backgrounds. I mean, you have people who are, successful. You have people who came from,
difficult upbringing. I mean, you have different people from literally all different walks of life, which I think is wonderful because we get all of these different perspectives. And we have, people that are practitioners, but we have educators, we have attorneys, we have students, we have a lot of students. Which I think is very cool. So, that to me, that human nature or that human aspect of using technology, to me, I hope we never forget that because, again, it's a tool, and we need to expand our humanity, not shrink.
Yeah, that's a good point. So through this journey, so I know you were, I'll say, an early MarTech adopter, but you were somebody that's been involved in technology for a while now. But through this last 2 years, I mean, your exposure has probably exploded, outside of your realm. And what would you advise your younger self about embracing emerging technologies now that you've been through this journey? What advice would you give, or what would you say?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is beware of burnout. And that's the reason I pivoted from the marketing technology industry into the cattle business. I was burned out. And what happened was I did online marketing, and I was one of the initial social media professionals in town and even nationally. And so same thing, that social media came, it just launched with such speed. And then what happened was Facebook and the vitriol and all the garbage that goes along with that. And I got burned out and I got sick of it. And what that did was it kind of shut me off. I insulated because I didn't want to be around the politics and the gamesmanship and that kind of stuff. So I would say, beware of burnout, work-life balance. I never had that. Still don't, but working on it. But, balance and being at an even speed, and a consistent speed, I guess is the better way to say it, instead of always being in race mode, which I'm kind of still am right now, but to sit back and enjoy the ride, and enjoy the human contacts that you're going to make and your new friends. That's the special part of it, not the business, not any revenue or monetization of that.
I think the irony of life is the older you get, the more you realize that the slower you should go.
And time is the most important. Time is worth more than gold for me. And then I'd say the other thing is stay curious too, and stay curious in that don't get locked into a certain mindset. Don't get locked into a certain point of view. Be open-minded.
So we talked a little bit about prompts, and this idea that prompt engineering is, kind of the secret sauce to engaging in artificial intelligence. Really is understanding how to literally prompt the machine, prompt the engine to give you what you're looking for, or to interact. What advice would you give to someone? So I think you self-described naysayer 2 years ago.
Yeah, certainly.
What advice, and I think you run into this a lot through the club, people who are still maybe skeptical, still maybe thinking AI is not for me, it's not for my business, it's not for my role, whatever that might be. What advice would you give to those people about how to either get started or how to maybe reframe their thinking about what artificial intelligence means to them?
Great question. I would, if people are trying to figure out what it means, I would say, talk to others, have conversations with friends and family. And if you're resistant, that's fine. But I think, just get a sense of how are other people adopting it? What barriers are they seeing? What, maybe pitfalls have they landed on? But I think it's talking to other people. I think the winners are going to be people who embrace AI as a technology, or as a tool and technology that can help. I'd say the laggards, people that are resistant to this technology, it's going to be very difficult for them to catch up. And so, what I say with either individuals or companies is start with one thing. One thing, write a blog, or have AI write a song, or take a picture of your pantry and have it come up with a recipe for you. Do something that's low risk, that's easy, get your feet wet, and do whatever is comfortable to you. I wouldn't force myself, or I wouldn't recommend somebody to force themselves to use the technology, but I would just say, dip your toe in the water, try something. You could ask AI, like, I'm new to AI, I have no idea, like here's what I do, help me.
I laugh because I've done that. Like I've said, I don't know what I'm doing here, like, help me. And
Yes.
it's just been amazing, the response.
Now, on the prompts, for people that aren't familiar with really what a prompt is, think of it as the instructions that you're going to give it to any of these AI platforms. And so good prompts equal good outputs, bad prompts equal bad outputs, inconsistent prompts, et cetera, et cetera. So, the gold is in the prompt, and to really begin to understand what is a prompt. So, like if I was to say, Kevin, hey Kevin, how are you doing? You're like, great. Or if I was to say, hey Kevin, how was your spring break? What was that vacation that you went on? I saw photos on Facebook or something like that. I'm going to get a longer answer, right? Prompts are the same thing. So you could ask AI, write me a story. You're going to get a commoditized, crappy story. But if you say, write me a story about a Little League baseball player who wants to grow up to be a center fielder for the Kansas City Royals, you will get a more structured story. So really understanding how to use prompts to get the outputs that you want. But the secret here, and what I've been doing a lot of, is getting prompts to prompt a more sophisticated prompt. So if I want to create a video on Sora, which is ChatGPT's video text-to-video platform, and I can say, okay, show a video of eagles flying in and swooping down on their prey. Okay, if I use that prompt, it's going to be a crappy video that's not realistic. So what I will do is I will ask Claude or ChatGPT, this is my objective, here is my prompt. Please create a prompt that will help me create a realistic video in 4K and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not a videographer and I don't know anything about that. But I'm using a prompt to create a more sophisticated prompt, which then gives me much, much better output. So a lot of what I'm doing, same as a marketing plan. So I could say, please create a marketing plan for me and ask me 5 questions, to help you create a better prompt. So then I will have a prompt and then I'm going to run it through. And what I do is I say, grade my prompt from a score of 0 to 10 or 0 to 100 and give me recommendations to make it better, give me some gap analysis, whatever else I'm asking for it. And then I will continue to update that prompt or revise the prompt until I think it's more as comprehensive as I want it to be. So there is a lot of prompt iteration, which I'm not sure if I've ever used those 2 words in combination before, but it's impossible to be a prompt engineer, to hit the ground and to have that level of expertise, but you can have these tools help you be a prompt engineer, and in the future it will be voice to prompt. So what's going to happen is it will be multimodal. I'm going to ask whatever platform I'm using, I'm going to say, okay, I need to create a 30-second video for a commercial for the AI Club. Here's what I want. Help me create the elements, the framework for that prompt, and then actually help me execute the video. So it's really step by step. The other way that we, the metaphor that we use, writing a book. Okay, so think about AI as step by step. We're writing a book. We want to figure out, what's the book about? What's the base story? And then what are the chapters within that story? And then what is the story within the chapters, right? And so same thing for prompt engineering, crawl, walk, run, that we can start with fairly simple prompts. We can work our way up into complexities. And the prompts that I'm using right now can be like 1 or 2 word pages long and maybe even longer. So I would not start with the complexity because it's kind of difficult to start in the middle, but I think once you understand the fundamentals, the light bulbs will come on and you'll start to say, oh, what if I do this, what if I do that? You'll have experiments, it'll work, and then you're off to the races.
Yeah, good playbook there. I mean, it's amazing when you've got a tool that trains you to use the tool. Right.
And I can't remember any other tools.
That's what I was trying to think of when I was getting ready to ask the question. I was like, when have we seen this before where there's a tool that trains you how to use the tool in a better way?
I'm going to pick on Google. And I use Google's AdWords in 2000, I mean, like really when it launched, and it sucked. It was so shitty, forgive the expression, that I actually never bought Google stock, because I'm like, if they're making money through marketing and it's their UI UX is difficult, they're never going to succeed. I was wrong. But yeah, so
yeah, it's incredible, and that's great advice. So real quickly, what favorite AI tools right now? What's Chris using?
Yeah, so I call them my dream team. Perplexity's my go-to. Perplexity's been my go-to for the last 2 years. So what is Perplexity? Perplexity, the way that I describe it, is what Google wants to be. It is an AI-powered search tool. Although it is a generative AI tool, it can do generative AI things. But what I use it for is, tell me about Kevin McGinnis and Keystone Innovation District. Give me 5 reasons why I should go to an event. Give me the top 10 grass-fed beef companies in Kansas City. Or if I'm in Las Vegas, give me the Kansas City-style barbecue places closest to the Bellagio Hotel. So it's a multi-layered search tool that brings back real-time information, and they will actually give you the sources. So I use that personally and professionally. I certainly use ChatGPT almost as a primary care physician. It can do a lot of things. Good, not great. Claude is my other go-to right now, Claude.ai. I'm using it for business soundboarding, almost like a management consultant. So if I'm doing a training presentation, same kind of thing, I will say, here's my audience, here's the survey that they did, here's all this contextual information, do a gap analysis. What are additional exercises that I could add that are not included? So I'm using Claude basically as a soundboard and refining ideas, helping me take ideas into action and build stuff. And it actually builds it in real time, so you can kind of tweak different sections, and it'll rewrite it over on the right. Claude also has web crawling capability now, which is kind of interesting. So those are my go-tos, but I'm probably testing 10 plus other platforms simultaneously to basically see who's going to win that horse race. And to do side-by-side testing and use cases. I'll take the exact same prompts, I'll put it through a number of different platforms, and then I'll kind of pick my own winner.
So I ask everybody this question, but I had to kind of reformat it a little for you and for this conversation. So what is a seemingly crazy AI idea that you've encountered through the AI Club or otherwise that you believe could actually transform an industry? The way the question's usually asked, just to give you the context, is what's the dumbest thing you've ever done that people laughed at that ended up being genius? So in that
I've done a lot of dumb things that never turned out to be genius.
Yeah.
As far as the club,
the craziest idea that you think actually is going to have legs.
one, there haven't been a lot of crazy ideas, so there's no outliers in that I'm going to do something crazy. But I think one of the things that was very novel to me was voter education. And somebody who actually did the demo day here, but somebody that is trying to organize information to help us be smarter, to help us to curate information so we can learn about different candidates. I didn't think that there would be AI use cases for politics like that, but I thought that that was very interesting and a tool that I could use to make myself smarter on issues that I'm not smart about.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's a great use case. So, Chris, thank you for what you're doing for the Kansas City community, for the Kansas City innovation community. Like you've hosted the event here several times, and it's just so impressive to see the community that you've developed, to see that it's really furthering, I think, our technology ecosystem here in Kansas City. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to say thank you because, like in this room that I see, not necessarily in our events, but in your events, just the energy and collaboration. I mean, this is what fuels my tank. And to have you bring together a venue in the middle of the city that can spawn this type of innovation, freaking awesome. So thank you for what you've done. And I think it's our city. It's awesome people doing awesome things with awesome energy. And so I think we're just getting started. And I appreciate the opportunity to join you today. And we're just getting started, right?
Fantastic. How does somebody get involved with the AI Club?
If you want to learn more about the Kansas City AI Club, you can find us on our website, kansascity.ai. We are a volunteer-based organization, so we are updating that website, so stay tuned. We also have a fairly large LinkedIn page, so just go to LinkedIn, type in Kansas City AI Club. You can find more information there. We're active on the social networks as well, but really the website and the LinkedIn's the best way to learn more about us.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you being here tonight, and I also look forward to having you back to talk about the progress that the club continues to make, and your own journey in going from naysayer to advocate to evangelist to early adopter and expert. So again, thanks a lot for being here, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Enjoyed our conversation.
Perfect. Thanks.
Cheers.
All right. We're going to be right back for our next panel where we're going to be talking about innovation and crime prevention. So hang out here, and we'll bring the group up here in a few minutes. Thanks.